Since the first contemporary electric vehicles, or EVs, hit the road in the early 2000s, critics have questioned the clean moniker that has been given to them. EVs have been scrutinized by skeptics for a variety of reasons, including manufacturing issues, battery power sources, and total autonomy. The facts underlying the sustainability of electric cars have become somewhat obscured due to the amount of discussion and disinformation that has muddied the waters. So exactly how clean are these vehicles? Without further ado, let's answer the question, is it true that electric cars are good for the environment? But before we get into it, do me a favor and smash the like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button for notifications whenever a new video is published. In recent years, electric cars have become a more popular subject of discussion, and they've also become more apparent on city streets across the globe. As governments across the world pay attention to climate concerns and establish targets to decrease emissions, many are looking at the automobile sector as a major area where they can make a difference. One of the major ways they intend to accomplish this objective is to advocate for electric cars. Electric vehicles are powered at least in part by electricity. Electric cars and trucks, unlike traditional vehicles that utilize a gasoline or diesel engine, employ an electric motor fueled by energy from batteries or a fuel cell. Electric cars do not all operate in the same manner. Plug-in hybrids have a gas or diesel engine as well as an electric motor which is powered by a battery that can be recharged by plugging in. Other EVs run completely on electricity, avoiding the need for liquid fuels. Others turn hydrogen gas into energy to power an electric motor. Electric cars and trucks are frequently cleaner than even the most efficient conventional vehicles in terms of air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. The degree of cleanliness varies depending on the kind of vehicle and the source of energy. When battery electric EVs are fueled by the cleanest energy networks, EV emissions are similar to a vehicle that gets 100 miles per gallon. Charging and running an EV may be practically emission-free when powered entirely by renewable energy sources such as solar or wind. Although electric vehicles are more costly to buy than traditional cars, the greater upfront cost is often offset by federal and state subsidies. Refueling an electric vehicle may also be a quarter of the cost of gasoline, resulting in a cheaper total cost of ownership for electric automobiles. Switching to an electric vehicle may save you over $700 in annual gasoline expenses on average and over $1,000 in certain areas. Are there any downsides to driving an electric car? Yes, is the sensible response. Looking at an EV's comparative environmental life cycle evaluation reveals that certain elements of the vehicle are ecologically damaging, and they aren't as low pollution as you would think. To begin with, the source of the energy that powers your EV has a major effect on its carbon footprint. You're keeping it green if it comes from a sustainable energy source like solar or wind power. You won't be able to confidently say your EV is 100% planet saving if the electricity originates from a power plant that burns fossil fuels to generate energy. EVs and the batteries that power them depend on rare earth elements such as neodymium, lanthanum, terbium, and dysprosium, as well as other essential metals like lithium and cobalt to different degrees. Digging them up isn't exactly good for the environment. Just the emissions from the vehicle involved would be bad enough. There are also contaminants discharged into the environment during the mass production of EVs and batteries, which is another stumbling block to electric vehicles having a zero carbon footprint. Due to the battery packs they carry, EVs are also heavier than ICE vehicles, and this extra weight has the potential to generate more tire, brake, and road dust, but many EVs' regenerative braking technology may decrease brake particulate pollution. What is the impact of cars on the environment? Climate change causing greenhouse gases such as methane, nitrous oxide, and CO2 are the main greenhouse gases released by gasoline and diesel-powered ICE cars. But CO2 is the most damaging greenhouse gas emitted. This does not imply that all vehicles release the same amount of CO2. This is dependent on the kind and quality of fuel used by the vehicle. There's also the issue of air pollution. Vehicles release carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, particulate matter, volatile organic compounds, and benzene into the atmosphere, which may cause smog and harm human health, even mortality. According to a recent report, transportation amounts for roughly 1/5 of global CO2 emissions, with road travel accounting for 3/4 of those emissions, primarily passenger vehicles such as cars and buses, which contribute 45.1%, and trucks used to transport freight, which contribute 29.4%. With the typical passenger car emitting approximately 4.6 metric tons of CO2 per year, it's clear that a shift away from ICE cars is required if the world is to have a bright future. In comparison to a conventional vehicle, once an electric vehicle enters the road, it can pay off its carbon debt considerably more quickly. This is due to the fact that it lacks an exhaust pipe and therefore does not emit CO2 or other pollutants when driven. However, there are emissions at this stage, but they originate from a distant power plant rather than the car itself, since the energy needed to refill electric cars when they're plugged into charging stations needs to come from somewhere. The emissions are highly dependent on where the electric vehicle is driven and charged in the world. As the cleaner the country's electricity mix is, for example, energy generated from renewable sources rather than fossil fuels, the fewer emissions are produced when charging the electric vehicle, and the more environmentally friendly the use stage is. Are electric cars environmentally friendly? In some kind of a nutshell, the answer is mostly. You may be wondering how electric vehicles are better for the environment. It all boils down to an electric vehicle's power source, a rechargeable lithium-ion battery pack that drives an electric motor, eliminating the need for fossil fuels entirely. The pollution created during the battery production process is a common criticism used to counter the clean image of electric vehicles. The battery's composition includes a variety of rare earth materials, and their mining and processing may contribute to carbon emissions. This implies that all electric, battery-powered EVs emit no hazardous tailpipe pollutants like nitrogen oxides, which kill thousands of people each year. EVs also feature many fewer moving parts than conventional ICE cars, reducing the demand for ecologically damaging motor oil and its disposal. It's also worth mentioning that hybrids and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, PHEVs, which both use an internal combustion engine and a battery-powered electric motor, also emit hazardous exhaust emissions. According to T&E, which published a report comparing CO2 emissions from the life cycle analysis of an electric vehicle in the European Union to a similar conventional petrol or diesel car, an average electric vehicle in the EU today is 3 times better for the environment than a similar conventional petrol or diesel car. This is because, despite high levels of emissions during manufacturing, it repays its carbon debt during usage by not emitting tailpipe emissions and being more effective at consuming stored energy than conventional vehicles. An electric car's higher manufacturing phase emissions would be paid back in 2 years of driving with European average grid electricity compared to a typical vehicle, the ICCT wrote in its latest report. This emissions recovery period is no more than 3 years, even in countries with relatively high carbon electricity, such as in Germany, it added. EVs generate the majority of their emissions via their manufacturing process and the source of their energy, providing them with an advantage over petrol and diesel-powered vehicles, since there is no combustion and no tailpipe emissions. Based on your perspective, do you think electric vehicles are enough to be called environmentally friendly? Do you think this new type of car will be the future of vehicles on the road? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And before leaving, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button for notifications on our future content. With that being said, we'll see you in the next one.